An Arizona news anchor who saw the possible Nancy Guthrie ransom note told CNN it was clear after a couple of sentences that it might not be a hoax.
A lot of it is information that only someone who is holding her for ransom would know. Some very sensitive information and things that people who weren't there when she was taken captive would know.
It has been another gut-wrenching day here at NBC News as investigators search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. Today, authorities providing the most information yet, including new details about that purported ransom note received by multiple news outlets.
We begin with breaking news in the search for the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie. An updated timeline from authorities provides a clearer picture of the moments before and after Nancy Guthrie's disappearance.
Late yesterday, investigators swarming Nancy Guthrie's home in a renewed search for clues in the disappearance of Savannah's mom. The multi-agency team, including FBI agents, sheriff's deputies, and a Border Patrol canine unit, entering the property behind new yellow crime scene tape.
Law enforcement continues to say there is still no credible information to indicate that this was a targeted incident, and they have not yet given details on what led investigators to return to Nancy Guthrie's home late in the day on Wednesday.
So what do we know thus far about the ransom notes? Well, the family haven't paid the ransom. Let's put those words on screen. Why? Because the family doubt the credibility of the note. According to The Hill, there are reports of several ransom notes, right? The family know about them, the family have referred to them, but has the family paid the ransom? And if there is a ransom, why hasn't the ransomer been able to respond? Remember, the family said, please reach out to us. Another detail in the ransom note that strongly suggests it's bogus is the assurance that you will have no way of contacting us. Well, they found a way through the media, and we know that this was in the ransom note because TMZ told us that. And we can assume the family haven't paid the ransom either because no proof of life has been demonstrated. In short, we can assume the family don't believe the ransom demands are legit, and I agree with that assessment. I do think it was important to keep an open mind for a limited period, as we saw in the early stages, the kidnapping phase of the Ramsey case, but that period has now lapsed.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. I do think it was important to keep an open mind for a limited period, as we saw in the early stages of the kidnapping phase of the Ramsey case. And just as we saw in the Ramsey case, the deadlines mentioned came and went with no significant developments. That in itself seriously challenges the authenticity of the note. And that brings us to the numbers game. We know they were sent to 3 different news stations. That in itself is a sign of a scammer trying his luck playing the numbers game. In a sense, the Ramsey ransom note used a similar psychology. They made the note long, especially long, to distract and confuse the reader, and in a sense succeeded. I actually did a poll on my channel, and an incredible 5% actually believe the Ramsey ransom note is legit. I think if you believe that, you'll believe anything. We also know the authorities have already arrested the ransom note hoaxer. Did you guys know that? And that's according to the sheriff in this case. Of course, in the Ramsey case, the ransom note hoaxer was never arrested. Now, what makes these ransom notes tough to analyze is that we don't have access to them. We have limited knowledge about what's in them. We have limited knowledge about the format of the writing, etc. And beyond that, limited information as well. In true crime, the point of all of our analysis ought not to be analysis for analysis' sake. It shouldn't just be about morbid curiosity or entertainment value. True crime is about the safety, security, protection, and affirmation of law-abiding citizens. It's about trying to find justice, trying to find the truth. Thus, our thinking needs to be effective, practical, and especially in situations like this, urgent and on point. We need to be accurate. We need to be on the right track. Look at this from Aristotle. The purpose of knowledge is action, not knowledge. But often what limits us is a very limited set of information, especially in the first hours and days of a crime, just as we are dealing with here. A limited knowledge base, that's what true crime is often all about. It starts with a very limited set of variables, and the trick is to see the puzzle ahead of it revealing itself. How many are able to do that? Not many. And the many who think that they can do this, well, often can't. One of the biggest areas where we know very, very little is Nancy herself. We do get a peek into her inner world through her unusually accessible social media, and of course so did the hoaxer, and probably so did her abductor. We're going to go into that in a little bit of detail later on in this episode. But before we do that, we want to continue to pass what we know regarding the ransom notes. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Here's a 10-second bio about me. I've also done a lot of research into another case, the Ramsey case, that deals with a ransom note that turned out to be bogus. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button, and let's continue. Right, so what else do we know about the notes? Well, from our source, The Hill, what stands out to you in the first paragraph? The searchers entered the 5th day. That in itself is very important. Focus has shifted to the purported ransom notes multiple media outlets have received. The FBI said Thursday that a person behind an alleged imposter ransom note has been arrested. Now, isn't that the same person that has written these notes? And so look at this time. We are going into day 5, in almost day 6. In a very time-critical case, both deadlines have now blown away, with nary a peep from the abductor and no proof of life as was requested. I suspect no proof of life has been provided because the author isn't able to do so. And now that he has been proven to be a hoaxer, well, that has proved to be true. Also, think about this. It's been received by media outlets. Now, I spoke about using the numbers game, but here is the critical insight. All 3 notes were identical. The special information in the notes also didn't turn out to be that special after all. Just details about an Apple Watch and something about a floodlight that was included in the alleged notes. Now, one of the first photos that comes up on Nancy's Facebook is this one. You can see she's wearing a watch. Now, I'm not sure whether you can get the same kind of access on her Instagram. I also did go onto Google Maps to see if I could spot a floodlight from the street view, basically just using the internet to get this information. I must admit I couldn't, although one does see a series of lights along the driveway. Despite the family's appeal, there's been no proof of life shown. So this is the second video I've made now emphasizing that there are no legitimate ransom notes, no ransom, which means whoever did this didn't do it for the money. In other words, if you take the ransom notes out of the equation, you say they aren't real, just as in the Ramsey case, they aren't real, so something else happened here. And so if this wasn't for the money, if that's true, then it's not a kidnapping. It's also not a kidnapping for ransom. And if that is the case, that would make this quite an unusual case. And so if superficially we aren't dealing with what superficially appear to be the case, then we need to dig deeper. And we dig deeper by finding out who Nancy is and what she was all about. We also need to take a closer look at the timeline. And we do have some updates in terms of that. According to today.com, the timeline of events, according to the sheriff, January 31st, 5:32 p.m., Nancy travels to her family home. So she goes there by car. She's not at home. Then 9:48 p.m., the family drops Nancy off at home and the garage door opens. At 9:50, the garage door closes. February 1st, 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on camera. That's very late in the evening for someone to be walking around there. No video is available due to a lack of a service subscription. You need a subscription with Ring in order to have that feature. Then 2:28 a.m., Nancy's Pacemaker app shows a disconnect from her phone. This suggests that the incident played out over about 45 minutes from start to finish. That's quite a long time. 45 minutes inside Lucy's home at North Camino Escalante. Then 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy. 12:03, 911 call to the sheriff's office. We're not actually sure who made that call. Then 12:15, the patrol arrives at Nancy Guthrie's residence. Again, just a reminder, the purpose of knowledge is action, not knowledge. What can we do with this knowledge? And so in the next analysis, we're going to try to begin the task that is really the hardest part of true crime, which is getting to know the people we are dealing with from scratch. What we want to find out is if money wasn't the motive, what was? So I'm not going to take it further than that. Look out for the next episode on this, and I'll see you guys next time.